All right, thanks for staying. My name is Karthik. I'm one of the co-founders of Actual, and we build capital planning software for supply chains. And one of the key things here really is our focus is on capital planning. It's on the capital asset, so it's really on transforming physically what's in the real world, not necessarily about the operations and the movements between the assets. One of the things we heard from the first panel today is about the challenge in transformation, because when you have the brands, they're buying parts, materials, goods, supplies going into their products, but there's a disconnect in terms of the financing between, for example, the net zero commitments the brand makes and the margins and the operating realities of the people who are producing the raw materials, the products, the goods that go into those products. What we do at Actual is build investable capital plans to turn that sustainability intention of the brand into reality. Just two quick examples and I'll talk through what we do. Some of the work that we've done is in the fashion industry. So we worked with a group of about 700 New Zealand sheep farms, 3.5 million acres of land, and helped them build specific down to the acre plans of what they would do on their farms to achieve net zero. Replanting, feed, soil sequestration, biochar, etc. And using our software to communicate what those plans, the investments needed and the ROI up to the brands who are using the wool in their products who had made those net zero commitments. So the CFOs at those brands who are not experts in farming could understand the specific investments they'd have to make in order to make those commitments work. We're not always the bearer of good news. For some farms, there was no pathway. For other farms, there was a pathway, but it wasn't profitable. But for many farms, it turns out that there's an ROI associated with the investment, which the CFO of the brand could then go back through and very quickly say, we can actually spend money here. Similarly, we're doing work at the factory level. We've recently spun up work in chemicals or on SAF or on hydrogen, working with companies that are producing these goods and selling them to industries that have net zero mandates as well, and making a very clear, rationalizable capital plan for how they achieve net zero. We won a few awards from Time and Fast Company for the work we've done. You can read about some of the work in a variety of outlets. Our fundamental premise here is that real world results, if you're talking about, for example, achieving net zero, SDGs, et cetera, it's not a paperwork game, it's not about certifications, it's about actually transforming the real world asset, which requires actually taking capital and putting it into transforming that asset. But one of the big fundamental problems in this is that most capital projects experience huge time and cost overruns. This isn't my data, this is McKinsey's data. Typical mega project over $1 billion goes over cost by about 80%, which is pretty significant. So if you're starting to think about, hey, I as a brand have a net zero target, I think it's going to cost me $5 billion in my supply chain to invest in my suppliers, it's probably going to cost you about 80% more than that. This is one of the big reasons why you don't see brands making those direct investments into that supply chain. We talked to a lot of kind of the large Fortune 500 CFOs. They basically don't trust that whatever they think the cost is going to be, that they've modeled out, is what the cost is going to end up when they finish the project and they tally up the receipts. One of the fundamental reasons for this is a misalignment between the scientific and geospatial data that actually drives the risk and return and real costs with the way that capital planning is done today. Capital planning today is really a spreadsheet-driven exercise. So what ends up happening is you have scientific technical experts who come in and build scientific models that are very accurate, and those models get abstracted, and they get averaged, and they get put together, and you end up with one number that goes into a spreadsheet. So when you build a financial model, when you build the capital plan, you've erased all of the details about the distributions that go into the risk that would have helped you understand where you're going to overrun and where you're going to hit your costs. So our software goes all the way from the asset level, where you can go down to an individual site, bring in geospatial data, bring in the information, the scientific models about how the technology you're going to deploy works. So you have site-specific models. and bring all of that together into an overarching view where you can look at the entire supply chain and start to pinpoint specifically where there's ROI and where there isn't. So far, we've helped our partners plan over $15 billion worth of capital expenses, capital plans, and our partners, using our tools, using our models, have so far deployed over $500 million into their supply chains. So this is real. We have seen partners actually planning capital programs in over 40 countries, over millions and millions of sites, in agriculture, in telecom, in transportation, EV charging, broadband. Our models have been certified by the World Bank, by WSP and others, specifically to go in and help the CFO at the brand say, you know what, I'm going to sign the $1 billion check to go transform the assets in my supply chain. If you're curious about this, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.